Get on your knees and clean it again, you pathetic old woman. Vanessa Montgomery's hand shot out and slapped the mop from the elderly woman's grip. It clattered against the marble floor, dirty water splashing across the pristine tiles. The 68-year-old cleaning lady stumbled backward. Her hip hit the kitchen counter. Pain shot through her body, but she did not cry out. "Did you hear me?" Vanessa stepped closer, her designer heels clicking like gunshots. "I said, on your knees, now." The old woman lowered herself slowly. Her knees hit the cold floor. Her hands, wrinkled and trembling, reached for the fallen mop. Vanessa watched with a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "That's better," she whispered. "That's exactly where you belong." But Vanessa Montgomery had made a terrible mistake, because this trembling old woman on her knees was not who she appeared to be. She was Margaret Harrison, mother of billionaire Daniel Harrison, the woman who had sacrificed everything to raise the man Vanessa planned to marry, and she had just witnessed the true face of evil hiding behind a perfect smile. Before we continue this incredible story, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is there. Subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. What happens next will shock you to your core. 6 weeks earlier, Margaret Harrison sat across from her son at Le Bernardin, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Daniel had called that morning with news he described as life-changing. "Mom, I'm getting married." Margaret's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Married to whom?" "Her name is Vanessa Montgomery. She's incredible, Mom. Beautiful, brilliant, Yale-educated. She comes from one of Boston's most respected families." Margaret set down her cup carefully. "How long have you known her?" 8 months. But when you know, you know." Before Margaret could respond, the restaurant door opened. A woman walked in who seemed to command the attention of every person in the room. Vanessa Montgomery was stunning. Tall, elegant, dressed in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She moved through the restaurant like she owned it, her eyes scanning faces, dismissing each one as unworthy of her attention. Then she saw Daniel, and everything changed. Her face softened. Her smile bloomed. She rushed toward him with arms outstretched, transforming in an instant from ice queen to devoted lover. "Darling?" She kissed Daniel's cheek, then turned to Margaret with that same radiant smile. "And you must be the famous Margaret Harrison. Daniel talks about you constantly." Margaret stood to shake her hand. "It's lovely to meet you, Vanessa." "The pleasure is mine. I've heard so much about your sacrifices for Daniel. Working as a seamstress for 30 years, raising him alone after his father passed. You must be an incredibly strong woman." The words were perfect. The delivery was flawless. But something in Vanessa's eyes didn't match her mouth. "Thank you," Margaret said simply. "Please sit." As they settled into their chairs, a waiter approached. "Good afternoon. May I bring you something to—" "Water," Vanessa interrupted without looking at him. "Sparkling, cold, and don't take forever." The waiter's smile faltered. "Of course, ma'am." He hurried away. Daniel didn't seem to notice. He was gazing at Vanessa like she was the sunrise after a long night. "Isn't she amazing, Mom?" Margaret looked at her son's face so full of love and hope. Then she looked at Vanessa, who was checking her phone with a bored expression, now that Daniel's attention had shifted. "She certainly makes an impression," Margaret said. Vanessa's eyes flicked up. For just a moment, Margaret saw something cold flash across her face. Then the smile returned. "Margaret, I want you to know that I intend to make your son the happiest man alive. He deserves nothing less." "I'm sure you will, dear." But Margaret was not sure at all. The waiter returned with water. As he poured, a single drop splashed onto the tablecloth. "Seriously," Vanessa's voice cut like a blade, "can you not do the simplest task without making a mess?" The young man's face went red. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'll get a fresh—" "Just go. Send someone competent." He practically ran from the table. Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Vanessa has high standards. That's what makes her so successful in business." "I see," Margaret said. Vanessa shrugged elegantly. "I simply believe people should do their jobs properly. Is that so wrong?" Margaret said nothing, but she noticed how quickly Vanessa's mask had slipped, how easily cruelty had replaced charm, and she noticed how completely blind her son seemed to be. Over the following weeks, Margaret watched carefully. She accepted every dinner invitation. She attended every event where Vanessa would be present. She observed every interaction, cataloged every moment. The pattern became unmistakable. When Daniel was watching, Vanessa was perfect. Warm, attentive, gracious. She charmed his friends, impressed his business partners, and treated his mother with careful respect. But the moment Daniel looked away, everything changed. At a charity gala, Margaret saw Vanessa berate a coat check girl until the young woman was shaking. At a dinner party, she watched Vanessa mock a waiter's accent under her breath to her friends who laughed like hyenas. At Daniel's office, she overheard Vanessa tell his assistant that she would be looking for a replacement once the wedding was over. Each incident was small enough to dismiss. Each cruelty was deniable. But together they painted a portrait of a woman without compassion. Margaret knew she had to tell Daniel. But how? He was so in love, so convinced that Vanessa was his destiny. Any criticism would sound like jealousy. Any warning would seem like interference. She decided to try anyway. "Daniel, sweetheart, can we talk about Vanessa?" They were having lunch at his office, just the two of them. Daniel's face immediately tensed. "What about her?" "I've noticed some things, the way she treats people when she thinks no one important is watching." Daniel set down his sandwich. "Mom, please don't do this. I'm just concerned. The way she speaks to waiters, to your staff. She's under a lot of pressure. Wedding planning her job, trying to impress my mother." Daniel's voice carried an edge Margaret had never heard before. "Maybe if you were more welcoming, she wouldn't be so stressed." Margaret felt the words like a slap. "Daniel, I'm not—" "Vanessa warned me this might happen." And Daniel stood up, pacing to the window. "She said you might feel threatened by another woman in my life. She said some mothers have trouble letting go. She said that she was trying to prepare me. She knows how close we are, and she was worried you might not accept her." Margaret stared at her son, the boy she had raised alone, the young man she had sacrificed everything for, the billionaire who had promised she would never struggle again. He was choosing Vanessa's words over his mother's instincts. "Daniel, I would never—" "Mom." He turned to face her, and his expression softened. "I love you. You know that. But I also love Vanessa. I need you to trust me. I need you to give her a chance." What could she say? What could any mother say in that moment? "Of course, sweetheart. I trust you." But she didn't trust Vanessa, not for a single moment. That night, Margaret sat in her apartment, staring at the photograph on her mantel. Daniel, at 7 years old, holding her hand on his first day of school, his face full of trust, of absolute faith that his mother would protect him from anything. She had protected him then, from bullies, from poverty, from a world that didn't care about a widow and her fatherless son. Could she protect him now? Could she save him from a woman who had fooled him completely? An idea began to form in her mind. Dangerous, perhaps foolish, definitely desperate. But Margaret had never been afraid of desperate measures. She picked up her phone and dialed Rosa Mendez, the head housekeeper at Daniel's Hamptons estate. "Rosa, it's Margaret Harrison. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Rosa's voice was hesitant. "Mrs. Harrison, is everything all right?" "That depends on what you tell me. How does Vanessa treat the staff when Daniel isn't there?" Silence. A long, painful silence. "Rosa, I shouldn't say anything, Mrs. Harrison. Please, this is my son's future." Another pause. Then Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. "She's cruel, ma'am. She makes people cry. She threatens to fire anyone who displeases her. She told Carlos, our gardener, that if he didn't work faster, she would have him deported. Carlos has been a citizen for 20 years. Margaret's heart clenched. "Does Daniel know?" "She's completely different when he's around. Like two different people. We've tried to tell him, but he doesn't believe it. He thinks we're exaggerating." "Of course he does." Margaret closed her eyes. She's made sure of that. What are you going to do, Mrs. Harrison? Margaret looked at the photograph of her son again, 7 years old, trusting her completely. I'm going to do what I should have done from the beginning. I'm going to show him the truth. How? By becoming invisible. The next morning, Margaret put her plan into action. She went to a thrift store in Brooklyn where no one would recognize her. She bought the cheapest clothes she could find, worn blouses, faded cardigans, comfortable shoes that looked like they'd walked 1,000 miles. Back home, she removed all her jewelry, the diamond earrings from her 60th birthday, the pearl necklace from her anniversary, even her wedding ring, which she had worn for over 40 years. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Without the elegant clothes, without the confidence that came from being a billionaire's mother, she looked like exactly what she was pretending to be. A tired old woman, a nobody. The kind of person Vanessa Montgomery would never notice. She called Daniel. "Sweetheart, I've been feeling restless. I want to help with the wedding somehow." "Mom, you don't need to do anything. Just be there." "I know. But I heard Rosa mention you need extra help at the Hamptons house. Let me work there for a few weeks. I can use my maiden name Wilson. No one needs to know who I am." "You want to work as staff, Mom? That's crazy." "Indulge an old woman. I want to feel useful and—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I want a chance to get to know Vanessa better, in a natural setting, without the pressure of formal dinners." Daniel was silent for a long moment. "This feels strange, Mom." "What is— like you're testing her?" Margaret forced a laugh. "Testing her? Don't be silly. I just want to contribute, and maybe see what goes into running such a beautiful home." "I don't know." "Please, Daniel, for me." He sighed. "All right, but if anyone treats you badly, if you feel uncomfortable for even a second, you tell me immediately." "Of course, sweetheart. I mean it, Mom." "I know you do. I love you." "I love you too." Margaret hung up the phone. Her hands were shaking, but her resolve was iron. 3 days later, she arrived at the Hamptons estate as Maggie Wilson. Rosa met her at the service entrance, playing her part perfectly. "You must be Maggie. I'm Rosa, the head housekeeper. Let me show you around." Rosa led her through the servants' areas, introducing her to the other staff. Everyone was polite, but subdued. Their eyes carried a wariness that Margaret recognized immediately. These were people who had learned to be afraid. At noon, the sound of heels echoed through the house. Rosa stiffened. "She's here." Vanessa swept into the kitchen phone pressed to her ear, barking at someone about flower arrangements. "I don't care what the florist thinks. I want peonies, not roses. If she can't handle that, find someone who can." She ended the call and scanned the room, her eyes settling on Margaret. "Who is this?" Rosa stepped forward. "This is Maggie Wilson, ma'am, the new temporary help." Vanessa circled Margaret slowly, examining her like livestock at auction. "You're old. Can you actually work, or are you just looking for easy money?" "I'm a hard worker, ma'am." "We'll see." Vanessa turned to Rosa. "Put her on floors. Nothing important." "Yes, ma'am." Vanessa started to leave, then stopped. She turned back to Margaret with a cold smile. "One more thing, Maggie. I don't tolerate laziness, stupidity, or excuses. If you can't meet my standards, you're out. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She walked away, heels clicking like a countdown to disaster. Rosa exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry. She's always like this." "Always. Worse when Mr. Harrison isn't here. Much worse." Margaret picked up her cleaning supplies. "Then I better get to work." For the next 3 days, Margaret scrubbed floors, washed windows, and polished furniture until her hands were raw. Every task was criticized. Every effort was dismissed. "This window has streaks. The floor isn't dry enough. You call this polished. My grandmother could do better, and she's been dead for 20 years. Each insult was delivered with precision. Each humiliation was calculated. Vanessa never lost her temper, never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her contempt was surgical, designed to wound without leaving visible marks. Margaret endured it all. But on the 4th day, something happened that changed everything. She was carrying fresh linens down the hallway when she heard shouting from the library. "I explicitly told you those files needed to be organized by Friday." Margaret crept closer. "I'm sorry, Ms. Montgomery." It was James, the driver. "My daughter was in the hospital. She had an emergency appendectomy." "I don't care if your daughter was dying. When I give an order, I expect it to be followed." "She almost did die, ma'am. She's only 8. "Then perhaps you should have chosen a job with less responsibility, someone who can actually prioritize." "Ms. Montgomery, please. I've worked for Mr. Harrison for 12 years. He's always been understanding. Daniel isn't here. I am. And as far as I'm concerned, your years of service mean nothing if you can't follow simple instructions." Margaret's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" James's voice shook. "I'm saying that once Daniel and I are married, I'll be making changes around here, starting with staff who think their personal problems excuse professional failure." "You're going to fire me for taking care of my sick child." "I'm going to fire you for being unreliable. The sick child is just an excuse." Margaret heard footsteps. She pressed herself against the wall as James burst from the library, tears streaming down his face. He didn't see her. He just kept walking, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Margaret stood frozen. She had suspected Vanessa was cruel. Now she knew she was monstrous. A mother herself threatening to destroy a father for caring for his dying child. This was beyond unkindness. This was evil wearing designer clothes. Margaret knew then that observation wasn't enough. She needed proof. Something Daniel couldn't dismiss or explain away. That night, she approached Rosa in the staff quarters. "Rosa, I need your help." "What do you need?" "The security cameras. Daniel installed them throughout the house. Do you know where the recordings are stored?" Rosa's eyes widened. "In the security room, but only Mr. Harrison has access. No one else. Ms. Montgomery has a key. She asked for one last month." Margaret's mind raced. "Are the cameras running all the time?" "Yes, but the footage is automatically erased after 2 weeks." 2 weeks? Margaret nodded. "Then I have 2 weeks to get Daniel here to see it for himself." "How will you do that?" "I don't know yet, but I'll find a way." The next week tested Margaret's limits. Vanessa seemed to sense something. Her cruelty intensified. Her demands became impossible. "Scrub this floor 3 times. I want to see my reflection. Iron these sheets again. The creases aren't straight. Clean the windows from the outside. I don't care that it's raining." Margaret did everything asked of her. Her knees ached, her back screamed, her hands cracked and bled, but she did not break. Then came the dinner party. Vanessa invited 3 of her socialite friends for an afternoon of wine and gossip. Margaret was assigned to serve. The women settled onto the terrace, laughing loudly, speaking about people as if they were objects to be evaluated and discarded. "So Vanessa, how's the wedding planning going?" "Exhausting, but it'll all be worth it when I'm Mrs. Harrison." "I can't believe you landed a billionaire. How did you do it?" Vanessa smiled. "Men like Daniel are simple. They want a beautiful woman who makes them feel powerful. All you have to do is play the part. And the mother, I heard she's difficult." "Margaret," Vanessa laughed, "she's harmless. Old sentimental still stuck in the past when Daniel was her little boy. Once we're married, I'll make sure she knows her place." Margaret's hand tightened on the serving tray, which is, "Out of the way. Daniel doesn't need her anymore. He has me now." One of the women noticed Margaret standing nearby. "Careful, the help is listening." Vanessa glanced at Margaret with cold amusement. She's nobody. She can barely understand English." She raised her voice mockingly. "Isn't that right? Maggie, you don't understand anything we say." Margaret kept her eyes down. "No, ma'am, I just serve." The women erupted in laughter. "See, completely harmless." Margaret set down the wine glasses and retreated to the kitchen. Her heart was pounding, not from fear or humiliation, from fury. This woman planned to push Margaret out of Daniel's life, to isolate him from the one person who truly loved him, to consume everything he had built and discard anyone who got in her way. It was time to accelerate the plan. That night, Margaret called Daniel. "Sweetheart, I miss you. Any chance you could visit the Hamptons this weekend?" This weekend, I don't know, Mom. I've got meetings. Please, I want to hear about the wedding plans, and maybe you could show me around the estate properly. I've heard it's beautiful. Daniel hesitated. You've been to the estate before? Not recently, and not with you as my personal tour guide. He laughed softly. All right, Mom. I'll come Saturday morning. Thank you, sweetheart. It means everything to me. She hung up. 2 days. She had 2 days to ensure that Daniel saw something he couldn't ignore. But Vanessa had other plans. The next morning, Vanessa arrived earlier than usual. Her face was tight with suspicion. Rosa, I want all the security footage from the past week backed up to my personal drive. Rosa's face paled. Ma'am, you heard me, all of it, before the end of today. May I ask why? Vanessa's eyes narrowed. You may not. Just do it. She knew. Somehow Vanessa knew something was wrong. Margaret overheard the conversation from the hallway. Her heart raced. If Vanessa erased the footage, all the evidence would disappear. Every cruel word, every threat, every humiliation would be lost forever. She had to act now. Margaret waited until Vanessa left for a meeting in the city. Then she approached Rosa. We need to copy that footage before she gets back. How I don't have access to the security room. But you know where she keeps the key. Rosa's face went white. Mrs. Harrison, I can't. If she finds out... Rosa, listen to me. That woman threatened to fire James for taking care of his dying daughter. She plans to get rid of everyone on this staff once she's married. She told her friends she's going to push me out of Daniel's life. Tears welled in Rosa's eyes. I know, we all know, but what can we do? We can show Daniel the truth before it's too late. Rosa was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. The key is in her bedroom, top drawer of her vanity. She always keeps it there. Can you get it? Yes, but we have to be fast. 20 minutes later, Rosa returned with the key. She'll be back by 5. We have 3 hours. They hurried to the security room. Margaret's hands trembled as she unlocked the door. Inside, a wall of monitors showed every room in the house. Recording equipment hummed quietly in the corner. How do we copy the footage? Margaret asked. Rosa pointed to a computer console. Everything is stored digitally. We can download it to a flash drive. Do you know how? My son taught me. He works in IT. Rosa sat down and began typing. It will take about an hour to copy everything from the past 2 weeks. Do it. They waited in tense silence as the progress bar crept forward. Every sound made them jump. Every creak of the old house seemed like a warning. Finally, the download completed. Done. Rosa handed Margaret a small flash drive. Everything is on here. Margaret clutched it like a lifeline. Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for your courage. What now? Now we wait for Daniel. But fate had other plans. At 4:30, the front door burst open. Vanessa was back early. Rosa rushed out of the security room, locking it behind her. Margaret slipped the flash drive into her pocket. Where is everyone? Vanessa's voice echoed through the house. Why does this place look like a morgue? Rosa appeared slightly breathless. Welcome back, ma'am. We weren't expecting you so soon. Vanessa's eyes swept the room suspiciously. My meeting ended early. Where's the new one, the old woman? She's cleaning the upstairs bathrooms. Get her down here. I want the dining room prepared for tomorrow's dinner. Yes, ma'am. Rosa caught Margaret's eye as she came down the stairs. A silent warning passed between them. Be careful. She suspects something. Margaret entered the dining room where Vanessa was examining the table settings. Ma'am, you wanted to see me. Vanessa didn't turn around. I want this table completely reset. Different linens, different china, different everything. Yes, ma'am. And Maggie, now Vanessa turned her eyes like chips of ice. I've been watching you. Margaret's heart stopped. Ma'am, you're different from the other staff. Quieter, more observant. She stepped closer. Almost like you're paying attention to things that aren't your business. I'm just trying to do my job, ma'am. Are you... Vanessa studied her face intently. Because I have a feeling you're more than you appear to be. Margaret kept her expression blank. I'm just an old woman who needs work, ma'am. Nothing more. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled. Of course you are. Get back to work. She walked away, but Margaret could feel her suspicion lingering in the air like poison. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed in the staff quarters, the flash drive hidden under her mattress, and stared at the ceiling. Vanessa was getting suspicious. If she discovered the truth before Daniel arrived, everything would be ruined. Worse, Margaret would be exposed. And then Vanessa would make sure Daniel never believed his mother again. She had one day, one chance. It had to be enough. Saturday morning arrived gray and overcast. Margaret was in the kitchen when she heard Daniel's car pull into the driveway. Her heart leaped. But before she could move, Vanessa swept past her. Stay here. I'll greet him. Through the window, Margaret watched Vanessa rush to Daniel, throwing her arms around him, kissing him deeply. He held her close, smiling oblivious. They walked toward the house together, Vanessa's arm linked through his. Darling, I have the most wonderful day planned for us. A picnic on the beach, wine from that vineyard. You love just the two of us. Sounds perfect. But first, I want to check on the staff. Mom said she was worried about how everyone is handling the wedding stress. Vanessa's step faltered. The staff? Why would you bother with them? Because good employees are hard to find, and because Mom asked me to. Your mother. Vanessa's voice tightened. She certainly has a lot of opinions about how things should be run around here. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? Nothing, darling. I'm just saying perhaps she's a little too involved in things that don't concern her. They entered the house. Margaret stepped back into the shadows, but Daniel saw her. Ah, you must be part of the temporary staff. How are you finding the work? Margaret kept her head down. Fine, sir. Everyone has been very kind. Vanessa's eyes blazed. She's adequate, a bit slow but manageable. Daniel turned to Vanessa. You said everyone was working out well. They are. I just have high standards. Still, there's no need to be harsh. These people are here to help us. He smiled at Margaret. Thank you for your service. Please let Rosa know if you need anything. Thank you, sir. As Daniel walked away, Vanessa lingered. She leaned close to Margaret, her voice dropping to a whisper. I don't know what you're up to, but if you think you can turn Daniel against me, you're even more pathetic than you look. She walked away before Margaret could respond. But Margaret wasn't afraid, because in her pocket, she carried the truth. And soon, very soon, Daniel would see it for himself. The moment came sooner than anyone expected. That afternoon, Daniel announced he was going for a walk on the beach, alone. Vanessa tried to join him, but he insisted he needed time to think about business matters. The moment he was gone, Vanessa's mask shattered. Where is Rosa? She demanded, storming into the kitchen. And that old woman, where are they? I don't know, ma'am, Emily stammered. Find them, now. I want everyone in the main hall in 5 minutes. She marched toward the security room. Margaret's blood ran cold. She's going to check the footage. Without thinking, Margaret ran after her. Ma'am, wait! Vanessa spun around. What do you want? I think there's a problem in the dining room. Something spilled. I didn't want it to stain. Then clean it up yourself. That's your job. But it's wine, ma'am. Red wine. On the white tablecloth you chose for tomorrow. Vanessa's face contorted with rage. What? She charged toward the dining room, Margaret hurrying behind her. But when they arrived, the table was spotless. Vanessa froze, then turned slowly. There's nothing here. Margaret's mind raced. I must have imagined it. I'm sorry, ma'am. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. Vanessa stepped closer. Her eyes were narrowed to slits. You're lying. Why would you lie to me? I'm not lying, ma'am. I just made a mistake. No. Vanessa's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. There's something going on here. Something I'm missing. She grabbed Margaret's arm, her nails digging into flesh. Who are you? Really? You're hurting me, ma'am. Answer me. I'm nobody, just an old woman who needs work. Vanessa's grip tightened. I don't believe you. Vanessa. They both turned. Daniel stood in the doorway. His eyes moved from Vanessa's face to her hand still gripping Margaret's arm hard enough to leave bruises. "What's going on here?" Vanessa released Margaret instantly, her face transformed tears springing to her eyes. "Oh, Daniel, thank God you're here. This woman was being completely insubordinate. She lied to me. I asked what's going on." Daniel's voice was cold, not for excuses. He walked toward them, his eyes fixed on Margaret's arm. Red marks were already forming where Vanessa's nails had dug in. "Did she hurt you?" he asked Margaret quietly. "I'm fine, sir." "That's not what I asked." Margaret looked up. For a moment her eyes met her son's, and something flickered across Daniel's face, recognition, confusion. He stared at her for a long moment. "Have we met before?" Before Margaret could answer, Vanessa stepped between them. "Daniel, darling, this is ridiculous. She's just staff. Don't waste your time." "I'm not talking to you." Daniel moved past her. "I'm talking to her." He looked at Margaret with an intensity that made her heart pound. "Your eyes, they remind me of someone." Vanessa laughed shrilly. "Honestly, Daniel, you're being absurd. She's a 68-year-old cleaning woman. Who could she possibly be? Quiet, Vanessa." The words fell like stones. Vanessa's mouth snapped shut. Daniel reached out and gently took Margaret's hand. He studied the marks on her arm, then looked into her eyes again. "I know you," he said softly. "I'm sure of it." Margaret's vision blurred with tears she couldn't hide. "Daniel," she whispered. "My boy." His face went white. Behind them, Vanessa let out a gasp of horror. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no." Daniel's hand trembled in his mother's grip. Mom, is that you?" And in that moment, the truth that had been hidden for 6 long weeks finally came crashing into the light. Daniel's hand trembled as he held his mother's fingers. His face had gone pale, his eyes wide with disbelief and horror. "Mom," he whispered again, "what are you doing here? Why are you dressed like this?" Margaret opened her mouth to answer, but Vanessa was faster. "This is insane!" Vanessa's voice rose to a shriek. "She's been spying on me. She's been pretending to be staff so she could destroy our relationship." Daniel didn't look at her. His eyes remained fixed on his mother's face, on the marks on her arm, on the worn clothes she was wearing. "Did you do this?" he asked quietly. "Did you hurt my mother? Your mother infiltrated my home." Vanessa grabbed his arm. "She lied to everyone. She's been here for weeks, watching me, waiting for any excuse to—" "I asked you a question." Daniel's voice was ice. "Did you hurt her?" Vanessa's face contorted. "She's manipulating you. Can't you see what she's doing?" Daniel pulled his arm free. He turned back to Margaret, and his voice cracked. "Mom, please, tell me what's going on." Margaret took a deep breath. 6 weeks of pain, humiliation, and fear pressed against her chest like a weight. But she had to speak. She had to tell the truth. "I came here because I was worried about you," she said softly. "I saw how Vanessa treated people when you weren't watching. Waiters, staff, anyone she considered beneath her. I tried to warn you, but you didn't believe me. So you pretended to be a maid. I became invisible so I could see who she really is." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "This is ridiculous. Daniel, she's a jealous old woman who can't accept that you found someone else to love. She'll say anything to break us apart." "Then explain the marks on her arm," Daniel said coldly. "She grabbed me first. She was being insubordinate. Mom has never grabbed anyone in her life. You don't know that. You don't know what she's capable of." Daniel turned to face Vanessa fully. His expression had changed. The love, the warmth, the admiration that had always softened his features when he looked at her, all of it was gone. "I know my mother," he said. "I've known her for 35 years. She raised me alone. She sacrificed everything for me. She has never lied to me, never manipulated me, never given me any reason to doubt her." "And me?" Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "We've been together for 8 months. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means you had 8 months to show me who you are. And you did. You just didn't realize I was watching." Vanessa's tears dried instantly. Her face hardened. "Fine. You want to believe your mother over your fiancé? Go ahead. But you'll regret this, Daniel. You'll regret this for the rest of your life." She turned and stormed toward the door. "Vanessa, wait." She stopped, hope flickering across her face. Daniel walked toward her slowly. "Before you go, there's something you should know." "What?" "This house has security cameras in every room. Everything you've done for the past 2 weeks is recorded." Vanessa's face went white. "I haven't had a chance to review the footage yet," Daniel continued, "but I have a feeling it will be very educational. Those recordings are private. You can't. This is my house, my cameras, my recordings." Daniel opened the front door. "Your car is outside. I suggest you use it." Vanessa stood frozen for a moment, then her mask shattered completely. "You think you're so righteous?" she hissed. "You think your precious mother is some kind of saint? She lied to everyone. She pretended to be someone she wasn't. How is that any different from what you're accusing me of?" "The difference," Margaret said quietly, stepping forward, "is that I lied to protect someone I love. You lied to hurt people who couldn't fight back." Vanessa's eyes blazed with hatred. "This isn't over," she spat. "I promise you this is not over." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. For a long moment, mother and son stood in silence. Then Daniel's composure broke. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Mom, I'm so sorry." He fell to his knees in front of her, just as she had fallen to her knees so many times in the past 6 weeks. Tears streamed down his face. "I should have listened to you. I should have seen what she was. Instead, I let her hurt you. I let her humiliate you. Shh." Margaret knelt beside him, pulling him into her arms, just as she had when he was a frightened little boy. "You didn't know. You couldn't have known. But you tried to tell me. You tried to warn me, and I chose her over you. You chose love. That's not a crime, sweetheart. That's being human." Daniel pulled back, looking at her with eyes full of pain. How long has she been treating you like this?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks. He closed his eyes. "My mother on her hands and knees scrubbing floors, being insulted, being abused, for 6 weeks. I chose this, Daniel. I chose to endure it so you could see the truth. But I should have seen it without you having to sacrifice yourself. I should have—" "Daniel." Margaret took his face in her hands. "Look at me." He opened his eyes. "You see it now. That's what matters. You see it now." Rosa appeared in the doorway, her face wet with tears. "Mr. Harrison, is everything all right?" Daniel rose slowly to his feet. He looked at Rosa, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "No," he said. "Everything is not all right. But it will be." He paused. "How long has Vanessa been treating the staff this way?" Rosa hesitated. "Please," Daniel said. "I need to know." "Since she moved in, sir, 8 months ago. At first it was small things, sharp words, unreasonable demands, but it got worse over time, much worse." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Rosa's voice dropped. "She threatened us, sir. She said if anyone complained to you, she would make sure we were all fired and blacklisted. She said she had connections that no one in New York would hire us again." Daniel's face darkened with fury. "She threatened you with your jobs, with your livelihoods." "Yes, sir. Who else? Who else did she threaten?" "Everyone, sir. James Carlos, Emily Grace Thomas, all of us." "James." Daniel's voice sharpened. "Where is James?" Rosa's face crumpled. "He's in his room, sir. Ms. Montgomery threatened to fire him last week because he took time off when his daughter was in the hospital." "His daughter, Maya. What happened to Maya?" "Emergency appendectomy, sir. She almost died, but Ms. Montgomery said she didn't care. She said if James couldn't prioritize his job, she would replace him." Daniel turned to Margaret. "Is this true?" "I heard it myself. She told James his years of service meant nothing. She said she would fire him for being unreliable." Daniel's hands clenched into fists. "I want everyone assembled in the main hall. Every single member of staff. Now." 15 minutes later, all 8 employees stood before Daniel Harrison. Their faces showed a mixture of fear, hope, and confusion. Margaret stood beside her son, still wearing her worn uniform. She would not change clothes until this was over, until justice was done. "I owe all of you an apology," Daniel began. "For the past 8 months, someone I trusted has been mistreating you, threatening you, making your lives miserable, and I didn't see it." No one moved. No one spoke. "That changes today." Daniel's voice hardened. "Vanessa Montgomery will never set foot in this house again. Her belongings will be packed and shipped to her. If she attempts to contact any of you, if she threatens you in any way, I want to know immediately." Relief flooded through the room like a wave. "Mr. Harrison," James stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Sir, my daughter. How is Maya?" James blinked, surprised that Daniel remembered her name. "She's recovering, sir. She comes home from the hospital tomorrow." "Take the rest of the week off, paid. Stay with your daughter." "Sir, I can't." "That's an order, James. Your family comes first, always." Tears spilled down James's weathered face. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." Daniel turned to the rest of the staff. "I want each of you to know that your jobs are secure, more than secure. You've endured months of mistreatment and you stayed. That loyalty means something to me." He paused, his voice softening. "But more importantly, I want you to know that you are not invisible. You are not disposable. You are human beings who deserve respect. And from this day forward, that is exactly what you will receive." Rosa was crying openly. Emily and Grace were holding hands. Even Carlos, the stoic gardener, was wiping his eyes. Margaret felt her heart swell with pride. This was her son. This was the man she had raised. "Now," Daniel said, "there's one more thing I need to do." He walked to his mother and took her hands. "Mom, I know I can't undo what happened. I can't take back the pain you endured. But I can promise you this, I will never be blind again. I will never let someone's mask fool me into ignoring what's right in front of my face." Margaret squeezed his hands. "That's all I ever wanted, sweetheart. And one more thing." Daniel's eyes glinted. "I think it's time we reviewed that security footage." The security room was small and cramped, filled with monitors and recording equipment. Daniel sat at the main console, Margaret beside him. Rosa stood in the doorway, too nervous to come closer. "How far back does this go?" Daniel asked. 2 weeks, sir. After that, the system automatically overwrites." 2 weeks is enough." Daniel began to play the recordings. The first clip showed Vanessa in the kitchen, berating Rosa for placing champagne glasses in the wrong cabinet. "How long have you worked here?" Vanessa's recorded voice demanded. 10 years, and you still can't follow simple instructions. Maybe that's why you're still a housekeeper at your age." Daniel's jaw tightened. The second clip showed Vanessa threatening Carlos. "If you don't finish the garden by Friday, I'll have you deported. Don't think I can't make it happen." "I'm a citizen, ma'am. I've been a citizen for 20 years. "Then I'll find another way to ruin your life. Don't test me." Daniel's hands clenched. The third clip showed Vanessa with her friends on the terrace laughing about Margaret. "See that old woman? She's pathetic. Too stupid to even understand what we're saying. Isn't that Daniel's new hire? Who cares? She's nobody. Less than nobody." Daniel stopped the recording. His face was pale with fury. "I've seen enough." "There's more, sir," Rosa said quietly. "Much more." "I know." Daniel stood up slowly. "And I'll watch all of it, every second. I need to understand exactly what happened in my home while I was too blind to see." He turned to Margaret. "Mom, I need to ask you something." "Anything." "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you wait 6 weeks?" Margaret looked at her son with eyes full of love and sorrow. "Because words weren't enough. You loved her, Daniel. You trusted her. If I had simply told you what I saw, you would have thought I was jealous, or overprotective, or trying to sabotage your happiness. I might have believed you. Would you honestly—" Daniel was silent for a long moment. No, he admitted finally. I probably wouldn't have. That's why I had to show you. That's why I had to become invisible, so you could see the truth with your own eyes. Daniel pulled her into a fierce embrace. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I know, sweetheart, I know. But the story was far from over. 3 hours later, Daniel's phone rang. The caller ID showed Vanessa's name. He answered. What do you want? Daniel, baby, please listen to me. Vanessa's voice was soft pleading, completely transformed from the vicious woman who had stormed out earlier. I know I made mistakes. I know I wasn't perfect. But your mother manipulated this whole situation. She set me up. She documented the truth. There's a difference. Please, Daniel, can we just talk in person? I can explain everything. There's nothing to explain, Vanessa. I've seen the footage. All of it. Silence. What footage? The security cameras, every room, every conversation, every threat you made to my staff. More silence. Longer this time. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice had changed. Colder. Harder. So that's how it is. That's how it is. You're making a mistake, Daniel. A very big mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you. You'll regret this. I promise you, you'll regret this. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. Your mother thinks she's won something. She hasn't. This is just the beginning. The line went dead. Daniel stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he turned to Margaret, who had been listening nearby. She's not going to let this go. I know. She's going to try something. Revenge. Retaliation. Something. I know that too. Daniel's expression hardened. Then we need to be ready. The next morning, Daniel called an emergency meeting with his legal team. I want a restraining order against Vanessa Montgomery, he said. I want her barred from all Harrison properties, and I want copies of all security footage from the Hamptons estate preserved and secured. His lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, nodded. On what grounds? Harassment, threats, abuse of staff? Take your pick. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Can you document all of this? Daniel slid a flash drive across the table. Everything's on there, 2 weeks of footage, testimony from 8 staff members, and my mother's personal account of 6 weeks of mistreatment. Patricia picked up the drive. Your mother. Vanessa didn't know who she was. She treated her like garbage, like less than human. And you have this on video. Every moment. Patricia smiled grimly. Ms. Montgomery is going to have a very bad day. But Vanessa struck first. 2 days later, a process server appeared at Daniel's Manhattan office. Daniel Harrison. Yes, you've been served. The envelope contained a lawsuit, defamation, emotional distress, fraudulent misrepresentation. Vanessa Montgomery was suing both Daniel and Margaret for $50 million. Daniel read the complaint with growing fury. According to Vanessa's lawyers, Margaret had infiltrated the household under false pretenses and deliberately provoked their client into emotional outbursts for the purpose of destroying her reputation and ending her engagement. The lawsuit claimed that Daniel had conspired with his mother to publicly humiliate Vanessa and cause severe emotional trauma. It demanded compensation for loss of future earnings, since the broken engagement had damaged her standing in society and destroyed her prospects for marriage. Daniel threw the papers on his desk. She's insane. Patricia Chen picked up the complaint and scanned it. She's desperate. This is a Hail Mary. She knows she has no case, so she's trying to pressure you into a settlement. I'll never settle. Never. Good, because we have something she doesn't. What's that? Patricia smiled. The truth. The following weeks were brutal. Vanessa's lawyers filed motion after motion trying to suppress the security footage, trying to exclude testimony from staff members, trying to paint Margaret as a vindictive mother-in-law, determined to destroy her son's happiness. Daniel's team fought back on every front. They submitted the footage as evidence. They took depositions from every staff member. They documented every threat, every insult, every act of cruelty Vanessa had committed. The media caught wind of the case. Suddenly, the story was everywhere. Billionaire's mother poses as maid to expose fiancé's true nature. The headlines were sensational. The public response was overwhelming. People across the country shared their own stories of workplace abuse, of being treated as invisible, of enduring cruelty from people in power. Margaret became an unlikely hero, a symbol of a mother's love and sacrifice. Vanessa became a villain, a cautionary tale about the dangers of treating people as disposable. But Vanessa wasn't finished. One afternoon, Margaret received a phone call from an unknown number. "Mrs. Harrison, this is Vanessa." Margaret's blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you and I need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you." "Oh, but you do. You see, I've been doing some research about your past, about Daniel's past, about certain things your son probably doesn't want made public." Margaret's heart pounded. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about leverage, Mrs. Harrison, the kind that could destroy your perfect little family." "You're bluffing." "Am I drop the lawsuit, convince Daniel to settle, and maybe I'll keep what I know to myself?" "And if I refuse," Vanessa's laugh was cold, "then everyone will learn the truth about how Daniel really built his empire, the shortcuts he took, the corners he cut, the people he stepped on." Margaret's hand tightened on the phone. "You have nothing." "Test me and find out." The line went dead. Margaret sat in silence, her mind racing. Was Vanessa bluffing? She had to be. Daniel had built his company through hard work and determination. There were no shortcuts, no dirty secrets. Were there that night? Margaret confronted her son. "Daniel, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest with me." Daniel looked up from his laptop. "Of course, Mom. What is it? When you were building your company, did you ever cut corners? Do anything you're not proud of?" Daniel's face changed. Something flickered in his eyes. "Why are you asking?" "Vanessa called me today. She says she has information about your past, something that could hurt us." Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he closed his laptop. "There is something." Margaret's heart sank. "What?" "When I was just starting out, I was desperate for investors. I found one, a man named Viktor Kozlov. Russian. Yes, he gave me $5 million to get Harrison Developments off the ground. It was the only reason I survived that first year." "And?" Daniel's voice dropped. "Later I found out his money wasn't clean. He was laundering funds through real estate investments, through my company." Margaret felt the floor shift beneath her feet. "Did you know when you took his money, did you know?" "No, I swear I didn't know. By the time I found out, I had already returned every cent. I cut all ties with him. I reported everything to the authorities." "Then you have nothing to worry about." "That's not the problem, Mom." Daniel's face was grave. "The problem is the optics. If Vanessa releases this information, she can spin it any way she wants. She can make it look like I knowingly took dirty money and only came clean when I got caught." "But that's not what happened." "It doesn't matter what happened. It matters what people believe." Margaret felt a cold fury rising in her chest. "So she's threatening to lie about you, to destroy your reputation with twisted facts." "Yes, and she thinks that will make us back down." Daniel looked at his mother. "Will it?" Margaret's eyes hardened. "Never. Not for a single second." She stood up. "Vanessa Montgomery thinks she can threaten my son. She thinks she can use fear to escape justice. She's about to learn that she picked the wrong family to fight." "Mom, what are you going to do?" Margaret smiled grimly. "I'm going to do what I've always done. Protect my child." The next morning, Margaret called Patricia Chen. "I need you to dig into Vanessa Montgomery's background. Everything. Her family, her finances, her past relationships. Every skeleton in every closet." Patricia hesitated. "Mrs. Harrison, that could take weeks, and it might not turn up anything useful." "Then start now. I have a feeling Vanessa has secrets of her own, and I intend to find them." For the next 2 weeks, Patricia's investigators worked around the clock. What they discovered was explosive. Vanessa Montgomery was not who she claimed to be. Her family was not prominent Boston society. They were con artists who had reinvented themselves after fleeing fraud charges in Ohio. Her Yale degree was real, but she had nearly been expelled twice for plagiarism. And most damning of all, Daniel was not her first wealthy target. 3 years earlier, Vanessa had been engaged to another billionaire, a Texas oil executive named Warren Caldwell. The engagement had ended abruptly, with Caldwell paying Vanessa $5 million to disappear. The settlement had included a strict non-disclosure agreement, but Patricia found a way around it. "Caldwell won't talk to us directly," Patricia explained, "but his former housekeeper will." Margaret leaned forward. "What does she know?" "Everything, and she's willing to testify." The housekeeper's name was Maria Santos. She had worked for Warren Caldwell for 15 years before Vanessa arrived. Within 6 months of the engagement, Maria had been fired without cause, but not before she witnessed Vanessa's true nature. "She was cruel," Maria said in her deposition, her voice shaking. "Cruel and calculating. She isolated Mr. Caldwell from his family, from his friends, from everyone who cared about him. She controlled everything. Who he saw, where he went, what he spent his money on." "Did she ever hurt you directly?" "She pushed me down the stairs." The room went silent. "She claimed it was an accident, but I saw her face. She was smiling." "Why didn't you report it?" "I tried, but she had already convinced Mr. Caldwell that I was unstable, that I was making up stories. He believed her over me." Maria's voice cracked. "He believed her until it was almost too late." "What do you mean?" "One night, about a month before the engagement ended, Mr. Caldwell called me. He was crying. He said Vanessa had threatened to kill herself if he left her. He said she had a knife. He didn't know what to do." "What happened?" "I told him to call the police. He did. They came and found Vanessa completely calm, the knife hidden away. She told them Mr. Caldwell was paranoid, that he was the one who was unstable. But he ended the engagement anyway." "Yes, he paid her $5 million to leave. He said it was the best money he ever spent." Patricia turned to Margaret. "We have her. We have everything we need." Margaret nodded slowly. "Then it's time to end this." The courtroom was packed. Media cameras lined the walls. Reporters filled the gallery. The air crackled with anticipation. Vanessa Montgomery sat at the plaintiff's table dressed in a modest black suit, her expression carefully composed. She looked like a victim. She looked like a woman wronged. But Margaret knew the truth. And soon, so would everyone else. Daniel sat beside his mother at the defendant's table. His hand found hers under the table and squeezed. "No matter what happens," he whispered, "I'm proud of you." "Nothing bad is going to happen," Margaret whispered back. "The truth is on our side." The judge called the court to order. "We are here to adjudicate the matter of Montgomery versus Harrison. Counsel for the plaintiff, you may make your opening statement." Vanessa's lawyer rose. He painted a picture of a loving fiancée sabotaged by a jealous mother. He described Margaret as manipulative, Daniel as weak, and Vanessa as an innocent victim of a cruel conspiracy. Then Patricia stood. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, the plaintiff claims she is a victim. But the evidence will show that Vanessa Montgomery is not a victim. She is a predator." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "We will present testimony from 8 members of the Harrison household staff, each of whom will describe sustained psychological abuse at the hands of Ms. Montgomery. We will show security footage documenting threats, insults, and acts of cruelty committed while Mr. Harrison was absent from the home. We will introduce evidence that Ms. Montgomery has targeted wealthy men before using manipulation and intimidation to extract financial settlements. And we will prove that this lawsuit is not a search for justice. It is an attempt at extortion." Vanessa's face had gone pale. Patricia continued. "The defense calls its first witness, Maria Santos." The courtroom doors opened, and Vanessa Montgomery's past walked in to meet her. Maria Santos walked to the witness stand with her head held high. She was a small woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and hands that showed decades of hard work. but her eyes held a fire that years of silence had not extinguished. Vanessa's face had gone chalk white. "Ms. Santos," Patricia began, "can you please state your relationship to the plaintiff?" "I worked as head housekeeper for Warren Caldwell in Houston, Texas. Vanessa Montgomery was his fiancée from March 2021 to September 2021. And during that time, did you have occasion to observe Ms. Montgomery's behavior?" "Every day. I lived in the house." "Can you describe what you witnessed?" Maria took a deep breath. Her eyes found Vanessa's across the courtroom. At first, she was charming, sweet. Mr. Caldwell was completely in love with her. But within a few weeks, things changed. How so? She started isolating him, cutting off his relationships with friends and family. She convinced him that his sister was trying to steal his money. She told him his business partner was plotting against him. One by one, she removed everyone who might see through her. Vanessa's lawyer stood. "Objection, speculation." "I'll rephrase," Patricia said smoothly. "Ms. Santos, did you personally witness Ms. Montgomery making statements about Mr. Caldwell's family and friends?" "Yes, many times. She told him his sister was a gold digger. She said his best friend was jealous of his success. She called his mother a controlling old woman who needed to learn her place." Margaret's hand tightened on Daniel's arm. "And how did Ms. Montgomery treat the household staff?" Maria's voice hardened. "Like we were less than human. She screamed at us for the smallest mistakes. She threw things. She threatened to have us fired, deported, blacklisted from ever working again." "Did she ever physically harm you or any other staff member?" Maria paused. Her hand rose to touch her left shoulder. "She pushed me down the stairs." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. "Can you describe what happened?" "It was August 2021. I was carrying laundry up the main staircase. She came up behind me and shoved me. I fell down 12 steps. I fractured my collarbone and bruised 3 ribs." "Did you report this to Mr. Caldwell?" "I tried, but she had already told him I was unstable, that I was making up stories to cause problems. He didn't believe me." "What happened after that?" "She fired me, the next day. She told Mr. Caldwell I had quit, that I couldn't handle the work anymore." Maria's voice cracked. "I had worked for that family for 15 years. I loved them like my own. And she destroyed everything." Vanessa's lawyer was on his feet again. "Your Honor, this testimony is completely irrelevant. We're here to discuss the Harrison case, not events from 3 years ago." Patricia turned to face him. "On the contrary, Your Honor, this testimony establishes a clear pattern of behavior. Ms. Montgomery has done this before. She targets wealthy men, abuses their staff, and uses manipulation to maintain control. The events at the Harrison estate were not isolated incidents. They were the continuation of a deliberate strategy." The judge nodded. "Overruled. Continue." Patricia turned back to Maria. "Ms. Santos, how did the engagement between Ms. Montgomery and Mr. Caldwell end?" "He paid her $5 million to leave." "Did he explain why?" "He told me later, after she was gone, that she had threatened to kill herself if he ended the relationship. She held a knife to her own throat and said she would do it right in front of him." Daniel's face went pale. Margaret felt ice spread through her veins. But ultimately, he ended the engagement anyway. "Yes, he said he would rather lose the money than lose his life, because he realized that's what she would have taken eventually. Everything he had, everything he was." Patricia paused, letting the words sink in. "No further questions." Vanessa's lawyer approached for cross-examination. His face was tight with barely concealed frustration. "Ms. Santos, isn't it true that you were terminated from Mr. Caldwell's employment for poor performance?" "That's what she told him. It wasn't true." "And isn't it possible that your testimony today is motivated by a desire for revenge against the woman you blame for your firing?" Maria looked at him steadily. "I'm here because another family almost fell into the same trap. I'm here because I know what she's capable of. And I'm here because someone has to tell the truth." Move to strike is non-responsive. "Denied," the judge said. The witness answered the question. The lawyer tried again. "You claim Ms. Montgomery pushed you down the stairs. Do you have any proof, any witnesses, any medical records that support this claim?" I have medical records from the hospital where I was treated. I have photos of my injuries. And I have a letter from Mr. Caldwell apologizing for not believing me written after Ms. Montgomery left. The lawyer's face fell. I'd like to submit these documents into evidence, Patricia said, handing a folder to the clerk. The judge reviewed the papers. Admitted. Vanessa leaned toward her lawyer, whispering furiously. Her composed mask was cracking. Patricia called her next witness. The defense calls Rosa Mendez. Rosa walked to the stand, her hands trembling slightly. But when she took the oath, her voice was steady. Ms. Mendez, how long have you worked for the Harrison family? Almost 10 years. And during that time, how would you describe your working conditions? Excellent. Mr. Harrison has always treated us with respect. He knows our names, our families, our concerns. He's the best employer I've ever had. Did that change when Ms. Montgomery entered the household? Rosa's face darkened. Completely. Can you describe how she treated us like we were invisible? No worse than invisible. Like we were insects. She screamed at us for things that weren't our fault. She made us redo work that was already perfect. She threatened to fire anyone who complained. Did she ever threaten you specifically? Many times. Once she told me that if I ever said anything to Mr. Harrison about how she treated us, she would make sure I never worked in New York again. She said she had connections. She said she could destroy my life. And did you believe her? Rosa's voice dropped. Yes, I believed her. Why? Because I saw what she was capable of. I saw the cruelty in her eyes. I knew she wasn't making empty threats. Patricia nodded. Can you describe what happened when Mrs. Margaret Harrison came to work at the estate? At first I didn't know who she was. She told me her name was Maggie Wilson. She said she was just a widow looking for work. Did you eventually learn her true identity? Not until the day everything came out, when Mr. Harrison discovered who she really was. During the 6 weeks that Mrs. Harrison worked as staff, did you witness Ms. Montgomery mistreating her? Rosa's eyes filled with tears. Every day. Every single day. Can you give specific examples? She made Mrs. Harrison scrub floors on her hands and knees, then told her to redo them because of streaks that didn't exist. She criticized everything Mrs. Harrison did. She called her old, useless, stupid. She made her work until she collapsed. Mrs. Harrison collapsed. Yes, from exhaustion and dehydration. She worked 14-hour days for 6 weeks. Her body gave out. We had to call an ambulance. Daniel's hand found his mother's again. His grip was fierce, protective. And what did Miss Montgomery do when Mrs. Harrison collapsed? Rosa's voice hardened. She complained that it was inconvenient. She worried about how it would look if Mr. Harrison found out. She didn't ask if Mrs. Harrison was okay. She didn't offer to help. She just wanted the problem to go away. No further questions. Vanessa's lawyer rose for cross-examination, but his heart wasn't in it. Every question he asked only reinforced the picture of cruelty that was emerging. When Rosa stepped down, Patricia called James, the driver. His testimony was devastating. She threatened to fire me because I took time off when my daughter was in the hospital. Maya is 8 years old. She almost died, and Ms. Montgomery said she didn't care. She said if I couldn't prioritize my job, she would replace me. Did she use those exact words? She said my years of service meant nothing. She said once she and Mr. Harrison were married, she would make changes, starting with staff who thought their personal problems excused professional failure. Daniel's face was a mask of barely controlled fury. Patricia called Carlos the gardener. She threatened to have me deported. I told her I've been a citizen for 20 years. She said she would find another way to ruin my life. She called Emily and Grace the young housekeepers. She made us cry almost every day. She said we were stupid, incompetent, worthless. She threw a vase at Emily because the flowers weren't arranged right. It missed her head by inches. With each testimony, Vanessa's case crumbled further, but the most powerful evidence was yet to come. Your Honor, Patricia said, the defense would like to present video evidence, security footage from the Harrison estate documenting Ms. Montgomery's behavior over a 2-week period. Vanessa's lawyer was on his feet immediately. Objection. This footage was obtained without my client's knowledge or consent. The cameras were installed by Mr. Harrison in his own home for security purposes. Ms. Montgomery was informed of their existence when she moved in. The recordings are entirely legal. The judge considered. I'll allow it. A large screen was wheeled into the courtroom. The lights dimmed slightly. The first clip showed Vanessa in the kitchen berating Rosa. How long have you worked here? 10 years, and you still can't follow simple instructions. Maybe that's why you're still a housekeeper at your age. The contempt in her voice was unmistakable. The second clip showed Vanessa threatening Carlos. If you don't finish the garden by Friday, I'll have you deported. Don't think I can't make it happen. Carlos's recorded voice was steady. I'm a citizen, ma'am. Then I'll find another way to ruin your life. Don't test me. The third clip showed Vanessa with her socialite friends laughing about Margaret. See that old woman? She's pathetic. Too stupid to even understand what we're saying. One friend asked, Isn't that Daniel's new hire? Who cares? She's nobody. Less than nobody. Margaret sat perfectly still. Hearing those words again in this public setting cut deeper than she expected. But she did not look away. She refused to look away. The fourth clip was the most damaging. It showed the incident from the terrace. Vanessa deliberately spilling wine on Margaret, then forcing her to her knees to clean it up. On your knees, now! The courtroom watched in horrified silence as a 68-year-old woman lowered herself to the floor while Vanessa stood over her smiling. That's better. That's exactly where you belong. Someone in the gallery gasped. A reporter covered her mouth. When the footage ended, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. Patricia turned to face the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you have seen the evidence. You have heard the testimony. Vanessa Montgomery is not a victim. She is a predator who targets wealthy men and destroys anyone who gets in her way. She pointed at Vanessa. This woman abused an elderly widow for 6 weeks. She threatened an entire household staff with termination and deportation. She pushed another housekeeper down the stairs and collected $5 million from her previous target. And now she sits before you, claiming to be the injured party, claiming that she deserves $50 million because the truth was finally revealed. Patricia shook her head. The truth is not defamation. Documenting abuse is not conspiracy. Protecting your family is not a crime. She turned to the jury. We ask that you dismiss this lawsuit with prejudice, and we ask that you send a message that people like Vanessa Montgomery cannot use the courts to silence their victims. She sat down. Vanessa's lawyer gave his closing argument, but it fell flat. Every point he tried to make had been demolished by the evidence. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. The verdict was unanimous. Case dismissed. Vanessa Montgomery's face contorted with rage as the decision was announced. She shot to her feet, ignoring her lawyer's attempts to calm her. This is a setup, she screamed. They planned this. They conspired against me. Ms. Montgomery, please control yourself, the judge warned. I won't be silenced. That old woman ruined my life. She turned everyone against me. Daniel stood. You ruined your own life, Vanessa. The only thing my mother did was give you a chance to show who you really are. I loved you. Vanessa's voice cracked. I would have been a perfect wife. I would have given you everything. You would have taken everything, Margaret said quietly. That's all you know how to do. Vanessa lunged toward her. Security guards intervened, grabbing her arms before she could reach Margaret. Get your hands off me! Do you know who I am? We know exactly who you are, the judge said coldly. And if you don't calm down immediately, I will hold you in contempt. Vanessa struggled against the guards, her perfect composure completely shattered. This isn't over. You hear me? This isn't over. They dragged her from the courtroom. Her screams echoed down the hallway, growing fainter until they finally disappeared. Daniel turned to his mother. His eyes were wet. It's over, Mom. It's finally over. Margaret shook her head slowly. Not yet. There's still one more thing I need to do. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Harrison, how do you feel about the verdict? Daniel, will you press charges against Vanessa Montgomery? Is it true that you worked as a maid for 6 weeks? Margaret raised her hand and somehow the crowd quieted. I have a statement, she said. The reporters leaned in, microphones extended. I did not do what I did to destroy Vanessa Montgomery. I did it to protect my son. Every mother would do the same. She paused. But today, I want to speak to someone else. I want to speak to everyone who has ever been treated as invisible. Every maid, every waiter, every driver, every worker who has been humiliated by someone who thought they were above consequences. Her voice grew stronger. You are not invisible. You are not worthless. You are human beings who deserve dignity and respect. And I promise you, from this day forward, the Harrison family will fight for that dignity. She turned to Daniel. My son is announcing the creation of the Harrison Foundation for Workers' Rights. It will provide legal support, financial assistance, and advocacy for anyone who has been abused by those in power. Daniel stepped forward. We're committing $50 million to start, the same amount Vanessa tried to extort from us. We're turning her weapon into our shield. The reporters erupted with questions, but Margaret and Daniel were already walking away. 3 months later, the Harrison Foundation officially opened its doors. The response was overwhelming. Within the first week, they received over 2,000 calls from workers seeking help. Stories poured in from across the country. Maids who had been beaten, nannies who had been starved, drivers who had been threatened with deportation. Daniel hired a team of lawyers to handle the cases. Margaret personally reviewed every application, ensuring that no one was turned away. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. One afternoon, Margaret received a letter. The return address was a rehabilitation center in Connecticut. She opened it with trembling hands. Dear Mrs. Harrison, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to care, but I need to write it anyway. I've been in treatment for 3 months now, therapy twice a day, group sessions, individual counseling, medication for the anxiety and depression. I've been hiding my whole life. I'm not writing to make excuses. There are no excuses for what I did. I was cruel, vindictive, and selfish. I hurt people who didn't deserve it. I hurt you most of all. The therapists say I need to understand why. They say my behavior came from fear. Fear of being worthless. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of being seen as the scared little girl I've always been underneath the masks. My mother taught me that vulnerability was weakness. My father taught me that power was everything. I learned to hurt people before they could hurt me. I learned to take before anyone could take from me. None of this is your fault. None of this is Daniel's fault. It's mine. All of it. I don't know if I can change. I don't know if there's enough therapy in the world to undo what I've become. But I'm trying. For the first time in my life, I'm actually trying. You showed me something that day in the courtroom. When you spoke about the invisible people, when you announced the foundation, I expected you to gloat, to celebrate my destruction. Instead, you turned your pain into purpose. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if I ever will. But I want to learn. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harrison. I'm sorry for every word, every insult. Every moment I made you kneel, you deserved none of it. And I deserved everything that happened to me. Vanessa Montgomery. Margaret read the letter 3 times. Then she set it down and wept. That evening, she showed the letter to Daniel. What do you think? He asked quietly. Margaret was silent for a long moment. I think she's in pain. I think she's been in pain her whole life, and I think that pain turned into cruelty because no one ever taught her another way. Does that excuse what she did? No, nothing excuses cruelty. Margaret paused. But understanding isn't the same as excusing, and perhaps understanding is the first step toward healing. Are you going to respond? Margaret looked at the letter again. I don't know yet. I need to think. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. I know, sweetheart, I know. 2 weeks later, Margaret made her decision. She wrote back. Dear Vanessa, I received your letter. I read it many times. I don't forgive you. I'm not sure I ever will. Forgiveness is not something that can be demanded or earned. It either comes or it doesn't, and I can't force it. But I believe your pain is real. I believe your attempt to change is genuine. And I believe that everyone deserves the chance to become better than they were. I won't invite you back into my life. I won't pretend that what happened between us can be undone. The scars are too deep, and the trust is gone forever. But I will tell you this, the woman you were is not the woman you have to remain. The path forward is long and difficult, but it exists. I've seen people change. I've seen darkness become light. If you truly want to heal, then heal. Do the work. Face the pain. Become someone worthy of the second chance you've been given. And perhaps someday use your experience to help others who are trapped in the same cycle of fear and cruelty that consumed you. That would be the greatest redemption of all. Margaret Harrison. She sealed the letter and mailed it. Then she went to visit Rosa at the Hamptons estate. Rosa greeted her with a warm embrace. "Mrs. Harrison, what a wonderful surprise. I wanted to see how everyone is doing, and I wanted to thank you again for your courage, for everything." Rosa smiled. "We should be thanking you. Things are so different now. Mr. Harrison visits every week. He knows all our names, our families, our stories. It's like having a real home again. That's how it should always have been. Can I ask you something?" Rosa's voice dropped. "Do you ever regret it, pretending to be one of us, enduring what you endured?" Margaret considered the question carefully. "I regret the pain. I regret the humiliation. I regret every moment I spent on my knees scrubbing floors while a cruel woman stood over me." She paused. "But I don't regret the truth. I don't regret protecting my son. And I don't regret discovering that there are people like you in this world, people with courage and kindness and dignity, even when no one seems to notice." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "You noticed," she whispered. "You saw us when no one else did. I saw you because I was one of you. For 6 weeks I understood what it means to be invisible, and I will never forget that understanding." Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you, and for all the staff, a bonus from Daniel and me, to thank you for everything you've done." Rosa opened the envelope. Her eyes widened. "Mrs. Harrison, this is too much." "We can't accept. You can and you will. It's not charity, it's recognition. You earned every cent by showing up, doing your job, and maintaining your dignity under impossible circumstances." Rosa clutched the envelope to her chest. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Margaret embraced her one more time. "No, Rosa, thank you." 6 months after the trial, life had finally settled into a new normal. Daniel had thrown himself into the Foundation's work, finding purpose in helping others escape the situations his mother had endured. Margaret had become an unlikely celebrity, featured in magazines and interviewed on television, always using her platform to advocate for workers' rights. But the most surprising change came from within the family itself. One Sunday morning, Daniel arrived at Margaret's apartment for breakfast. He looked different, lighter, happier than she had seen him in years. "Mom, I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" Daniel took a deep breath. "I've met someone." Margaret's heart skipped. "Someone—" Her name is Sarah. She works at the Foundation. She's kind and genuine, and she treats everyone with respect. The janitors, the security guards, the interns, everyone. "How do you know she's not just putting on a show?" Daniel smiled. "Because I watched her when she didn't know I was looking. I watched her help an elderly woman carry groceries to her car. I watched her give her lunch to a homeless man outside our building. I watched her stay late to comfort a client who was crying." He looked at his mother. "I learned my lesson, Mom. I know how to see people now. The real them, not the performance." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Then I'd like to meet her." "I was hoping you'd say that. She's waiting downstairs." Margaret laughed. "You brought her here already. I wanted her to meet the most important person in my life, if that's okay." "Of course it's okay. Bring her up." 5 minutes later, Daniel returned with a young woman at his side. Sarah was not what Margaret expected. She wasn't glamorous like Vanessa. She wore simple clothes and no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her hands were calloused from work. But her eyes were warm, her smile was genuine, and when she shook Margaret's hand, her grip was firm and honest. "Mrs. Harrison, it's such an honor to meet you. Daniel talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. The best things. He says you're the strongest person he knows." Margaret glanced at her son. "He gives me too much credit." "I don't think so. What you did takes incredible courage, putting yourself through all that just to protect someone you love." Sarah's eyes glistened. "My grandmother was a domestic worker. She was treated terribly by her employers for 40 years. She never complained, never fought back. She just endured it because she needed the job to feed her family." "I'm sorry," Margaret said softly. "She died last year, but before she passed, she saw the news coverage of your case. She saw you on television talking about invisible workers." Sarah's voice cracked. "She told me it was the first time in her life she felt like someone understood." Margaret took Sarah's hand. "Your grandmother sounds like an extraordinary woman." "She was, and I promised her I would spend my life fighting for people like her. That's why I work at the foundation." Margaret looked at her son. Daniel was watching Sarah with an expression Margaret recognized immediately. It was the same way Richard had looked at her all those years ago, before the accident, before everything changed. Pure, unconditional love. "Sarah," Margaret said, "would you like to stay for breakfast?" Sarah's face lit up. "I would love that." As the three of them sat down together, Margaret felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. Her son had found someone worthy of his heart. The foundation was changing lives, and the pain of the past was slowly, steadily transforming into purpose. Margaret Harrison had spent 6 weeks on her knees, but she had risen stronger than ever, and she knew deep in her heart that the best was yet to come. 1 year had passed since the trial that changed everything. Margaret stood at the window of her apartment watching the first snow of December fall softly over Manhattan. In her hand she held an invitation, cream-colored paper, elegant gold lettering. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Daniel Harrison and Sarah Chen." Her eyes filled with tears, not tears of sadness, tears of joy, so pure it felt like a cleansing. "Mom," she turned. Daniel stood in the doorway, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. He wore a simple navy suit, no tie, his hair slightly disheveled in the way Sarah loved. "You're crying," he said softly. "Happy tears, sweetheart. Only happy tears." Daniel crossed the room and took her hands. "I never thought I'd get here. After Vanessa, after everything, I thought I was broken. I thought I'd never trust anyone again. But you did. Because of you." His voice cracked. "You showed me what real love looks like. Sacrifice without expectation. Protection without control. You taught me how to recognize the genuine from the fake." Margaret squeezed his hands. "You taught yourself. I just gave you the tools. The wedding is in 3 hours. Are you ready?" Margaret laughed softly. "I've been ready for this moment since the day you were born." The ceremony was held at a small chapel in Connecticut, far from the Manhattan spotlight that had followed the family for the past year. Only 50 guests were invited. Family, close friends, and the entire staff from the Hamptons estate seated in the front rows as honored guests. Rosa sat next to Margaret, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "I never thought I'd see this day," Rosa whispered. "Mr. Harrison so happy, so at peace. He found the right person," Margaret replied. "Finally." The music began. Everyone stood. Sarah appeared at the end of the aisle and Margaret's breath caught. She wore a simple white dress, no train, no veil. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers she had picked herself that morning. But it was her face that made Margaret's heart swell. Pure joy, uncomplicated love, the kind of happiness that couldn't be faked. Daniel's eyes never left Sarah as she walked toward him. When she reached his side, he took her hand and whispered something only she could hear. Sarah laughed, tears streaming down her face. The ceremony was short and beautiful. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Daniel pulled Sarah into a kiss that made the guests erupt in applause. Margaret clutched Rosa's hand. "It's over," she whispered. "The nightmare is finally over." But fate had one more surprise in store. The reception was held in a nearby barn that had been converted into an event space. String lights hung from the rafters. Tables were decorated with mason jars filled with candles. A small band played jazz in the corner. Margaret sat at the head table watching her son and his bride share their first dance. Sarah's head rested on Daniel's chest, his arms wrapped around her like he would never let go. "Mrs. Harrison," Margaret turned. A young woman stood beside her table, nervously clutching a small gift box. "I'm sorry to interrupt. My name is Emily. I worked at the Hamptons estate. I don't know if you remember me." Margaret smiled warmly. "Of course I remember you, dear. You and Grace were always kind to me, even when things were difficult." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to give you something. It's not much, but—" She handed Margaret the box. "It's from all of us, the staff, past and present." Margaret opened the box carefully. Inside was a silver bracelet, simple, elegant, engraved with 4 words. "You saw us." Margaret's vision blurred. "We pooled our money," Emily said softly. "We wanted you to know that what you did, it mattered. Not just for Mr. Harrison, for all of us. You made us feel like we weren't invisible anymore." Margaret stood and pulled Emily into a fierce embrace. "You were never invisible," she whispered. "Never. The world just wasn't paying attention." When Emily returned to her table, Margaret clasped the bracelet around her wrist. She would wear it every day for the rest of her life. The evening continued with laughter, dancing, and more joy than Margaret had felt in years. But at 9 o'clock, something unexpected happened. Daniel's phone buzzed. He stepped away from the dance floor to check it, and Margaret saw his face change. Something was wrong. She made her way through the crowd and touched his arm. "What is it?" Daniel showed her the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your wedding. I'm happy for you. Truly. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand that I'm trying to become someone better. I won't contact you again. I just wanted you to know that your mother's letter saved my life. Vanessa." Margaret read the message twice. "What do you want to do?" she asked quietly. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he typed a response. "Thank you. I hope you find peace." He pressed send and put the phone away. "That's it?" Margaret asked. "That's it. She's part of my past. Sarah is my future." He looked at his mother. "But your letter, what did you write to her?" "The truth. That forgiveness is a process, not a destination. That change is possible for those who truly want it. That she could use her pain to help others instead of hurting them." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You're remarkable, you know that. She tried to destroy you, and you gave her a path forward. I didn't do it for her, sweetheart. I did it because holding on to hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." Daniel hugged her tightly. "I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now go dance with your wife." 3 months after the wedding, the Harrison Foundation received an unusual application for funding. Margaret reviewed it personally, as she did with every request that came through. The proposal was for a rehabilitation program. It would provide therapy, job training, and support services for women who had been convicted of fraud, manipulation, or emotional abuse. The philosophy behind the program caught Margaret's attention. Many women who harm others were themselves harmed. They learned that cruelty was power. They learned that manipulation was survival. This program aims to break that cycle by addressing the trauma that created the behavior in the first place. The application was signed by the program's founder and lead counselor, Vanessa Montgomery. Margaret sat back in her chair, stunned. She read the proposal 3 more times. The approach was sound. The goals were realistic. The budget was reasonable. But could she really fund a program run by the woman who had made her life miserable for 6 weeks? She picked up the phone and called Daniel. "I need to show you something." An hour later, Daniel sat across from her, the proposal in his hands. "This is insane," he said flatly. "She's trying to manipulate us again." "Is she?" Margaret leaned forward. "Look at the program design. Look at the testimonials from mental health professionals. Look at the letters of support from former patients she's already helped. It could all be fake. It could, or it could be genuine." Daniel threw the papers on the table. "Mom, this woman made you scrub floors on your knees. She threatened our staff. She tried to extort $50 million from us. And now you want to give her money." "I want to give her program a chance. There's a difference." "Is there?" Margaret stood and walked to the window. The city stretched out below her, millions of lives, intersecting in ways no one could predict. When I wrote to Vanessa after the trial, I told her that redemption was possible. I told her she could use her experience to help others. If I meant those words, I have to act on them. And if she's just using this as a way to get close to us again, then we'll discover that quickly enough. But if she's genuine, if she really has changed— Margaret turned to face her son. "Then we have an opportunity to do something extraordinary." Daniel was quiet for a long time. "I need to meet her," he said finally. "Before we make any decision, I need to look her in the eye and judge for myself." "Agreed. And you're coming with me?" Margaret nodded. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The meeting was arranged for the following week. Vanessa had requested a neutral location. They agreed on a conference room at a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, far from any Harrison property. Margaret arrived with Daniel 15 minutes early. They sat on one side of the table, Patricia Chen on the other. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened. Vanessa walked in alone. Margaret barely recognized her. The woman who had once commanded every room she entered was gone. In her place stood someone smaller, quieter, stripped of the armor she had worn for so many years. Vanessa wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back simply. Her clothes were modest and professional, but it was her eyes that had changed the most. The hardness was gone. The calculation was gone. In their place was something Margaret had never expected to see: humility. "Thank you for meeting with me," Vanessa said softly. She didn't try to shake hands. She didn't smile. She simply sat down across from them and waited. Daniel spoke first. His voice was cold. "Let's be clear about something. I don't trust you. I don't forgive you. And I'm only here because my mother asked me to come." Vanessa nodded. "I understand. I wouldn't trust me either." "So convince me. Convince me that this program isn't just another manipulation, another way to get close to us." Vanessa took a deep breath. "I can't convince you of anything. Words mean nothing coming from someone like me. I've spent my whole life using words as weapons." She paused. "All I can do is tell you the truth and let you decide what to believe." "Then tell us the truth." Vanessa's hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the table. 3 years ago, I was engaged to a man named Warren Caldwell. I manipulated him, isolated him, and terrorized his staff. When he finally escaped, he paid me $5 million to disappear. "We know this," Daniel said impatiently. "You know the facts. You don't know what was happening inside me." Vanessa's voice cracked. "I was terrified, every moment of every day, terrified that someone would see through me, terrified that I would be abandoned, terrified that I was worthless." "So you hurt people to make yourself feel powerful?" "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper. "I learned from my mother. She was the same way, cruel to anyone she perceived as weak, obsessed with control, incapable of genuine connection. That's not an excuse. No, it's an explanation. There's a difference." Vanessa looked directly at Margaret. "Your letter taught me that." Margaret held her gaze. "What exactly did my letter teach you?" "That I had a choice. That I could keep running from my pain by inflicting it on others, or I could face it. Finally face it." Tears spilled down Vanessa's cheeks. "For 6 months, I didn't leave the rehabilitation center. I did therapy twice a day. I confronted every lie I'd ever told myself. I faced the scared little girl hiding behind the monster. And what did you find? Someone who had never been taught how to love, someone who had never felt safe enough to be vulnerable, someone who believed deep in her core that she didn't deserve kindness. Daniel shifted in his chair. His expression had softened slightly despite himself. "Why this program?" he asked. "Why help other women like you?" "Because I know them. I understand them in a way no one else can. I know how they think, how they manipulate, how they justify their behavior. And I know what it takes to break through those walls." "How many women have you worked with?" 12, over the past year. 3 of them have completely transformed their lives. 4 more are making progress. The others—" Vanessa shook her head. "Some people don't want to change. Some people are too far gone. I was almost one of them." "What stopped you?" Vanessa looked at Margaret again. "She did. Your mother. The woman I tortured for 6 weeks. The woman who had every reason to want me destroyed." Her voice broke completely. "She wrote to me. After everything I did, she told me that redemption was possible. She told me I could become someone worthy of a second chance." Vanessa wiped her eyes. "No one had ever said anything like that to me before. No one had ever seen me as something other than a monster." The room fell silent. Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out the silver bracelet Emily had given her at the wedding. "Do you see this?" Vanessa nodded. "It was a gift from the staff. The people you terrorized. The people you threatened and humiliated. Do you know what it says?" Vanessa shook her head. Margaret held up the bracelet so Vanessa could read the inscription. "You saw us." Vanessa's face crumpled. "That's what this is about," Margaret said quietly. "Seeing people. Really seeing them. Not as tools to be used or obstacles to be removed, but as human beings with their own pain, their own struggles, their own stories." "I know," Vanessa whispered. "I know that now." "Then prove it, not with words, with actions. Build this program. Help these women. Show the world that change is possible. You'll fund it." Margaret looked at Daniel. His face was conflicted. Years of pain warred with something else, something that looked like hope. "1 year," Daniel said finally. "We'll fund a 1-year pilot program. If we see genuine results, we'll extend our support. If we see any sign of manipulation, any hint that you're using this for personal gain, we'll shut it down immediately." Vanessa nodded quickly. "That's fair. More than fair. And 1 more condition." Daniel's voice hardened. "You will never contact me or my mother directly again. All communication goes through Patricia. If you need to discuss the program, you go through her." "I understand." "Then we have a deal." Vanessa stood slowly. She looked at Margaret one last time. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for believing that I could be more than my worst moments." Margaret met her eyes. "Don't thank me. Earn it." Vanessa nodded and left the room. When she was gone, Daniel slumped back in his chair. "Did we just make a terrible mistake?" Margaret placed her hand over his. "We made a human choice. We gave someone a chance to prove they've changed. That's not weakness. That's courage. What if she destroys everything we've built? Then we'll deal with it. But at least we'll know we tried." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You're the bravest person I know, Mom. I learned it from raising you." 6 months later, Margaret received a package in the mail. Inside was a thick folder. Reports, testimonials, case studies. The first 6-month review of the Vanessa Montgomery Rehabilitation Program. Margaret read through every page. The results were remarkable. Of the 12 women enrolled, 8 had made significant progress. 2 had completely turned their lives around. 1 had started working as a counselor herself, helping newer participants navigate their own journeys. Attached to the report was a note. "Mrs. Harrison, I don't expect you to respond to this. I just wanted you to know that your investment is working. Here is a letter from one of our graduates. I think you should read it. Vanessa." Margaret unfolded the second letter. "Dear Mrs. Harrison, my name is Jennifer. I am 34 years old. For 15 years, I was the kind of person everyone hates. I manipulated my family, abused my partners, and destroyed anyone who got in my way. I didn't think I could change. I didn't think I deserved to change. Then I met Vanessa. She told me about you, about what you did to protect your son, about the 6 weeks you spent pretending to be a maid, about the letter you wrote her after everything she did to you. She told me that if you could show compassion to your worst enemy, then maybe there was hope for people like us. I've been in this program for 6 months. I've confronted things about myself that I never wanted to see. I've cried more tears than I knew I had. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I might become someone worth knowing. Thank you for funding this program. Thank you for believing that monsters can become human beings. You saved more than your son. You saved all of us. Jennifer. Margaret set down the letter. Tears streamed down her face. Not tears of sadness or pain. Tears of something she could barely name. Purpose. Meaning. The realization that everything she had endured had led to this moment. She picked up her phone and called Daniel. "The program is working," she said. "I saw the reports." "Daniel, I think we should expand it. More funding, more cities, more women." Daniel was silent for a moment. "You really believe in this?" "I believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. And I believe that the best way to defeat darkness is to transform it into light." "Then let's do it. Let's expand the program." "Thank you, sweetheart." "Don't thank me, Mom. You're the one who started all of this, the day you decided to put on a maid's uniform and scrub floors." Margaret smiled through her tears. "I just wanted to protect you." "You did more than that. You changed the world." 2 years after the trial, the Harrison Foundation hosted its first annual gala. 500 guests filled the ballroom. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and most importantly, the workers whose lives had been transformed by the Foundation's work. Margaret stood at the podium looking out at the faces before her. 3 years ago, she began, I made a decision that changed my life. I put on a maid's uniform, went to my son's house, and pretended to be someone I wasn't. The room was silent. I did it because I was afraid that my son was about to marry someone who would destroy him, afraid that I couldn't protect him with words alone, afraid that the truth would never come to light. She paused. For 6 weeks I scrubbed floors, I washed windows, I endured insults and humiliation. I became invisible. But in that invisibility I discovered something profound. I discovered the millions of people who live their entire lives being treated as less than human. The maids, the waiters, the drivers, the caregivers. The people who keep our world running while we pretend they don't exist. Margaret's voice strengthened. Tonight I want to honor those people, not with pity, with respect, with recognition, with the simple acknowledgement that their lives matter as much as anyone's in this room. She raised her glass. To the invisible, may we always see you. The room erupted in applause. Later that evening, Daniel found Margaret on the balcony looking out at the city lights. "That was an incredible speech, Mom." "It was the truth. That's all." Daniel stood beside her. "I have something to tell you." "What is it?" "Sarah is pregnant. We found out this morning." Margaret's heart stopped. Then it exploded with joy. "A baby? I'm going to be a grandmother." Daniel laughed. "You're going to be the best grandmother in the world." Margaret threw her arms around him, crying and laughing at the same time. "This is the happiest day of my life," she whispered. "The happiest day." "Mom, there's more." She pulled back. "More. If it's a girl, we want to name her after you. Margaret Rose Harrison." Margaret couldn't speak. The tears came too fast, too strong. Daniel held her as she wept. "You gave me everything," he said softly. "Your sacrifice, your love, your courage. This is the only way I know to say thank you." Margaret finally found her voice. "I would do it all again," she whispered. "Every moment, every tear, every hour on my knees. For this, for you, for the family we've become." Daniel kissed her forehead. "I know, Mom. I know." They stood together on the balcony, mother and son looking out at a city that had witnessed their darkest hours and their greatest triumphs. Below them, the Foundation Gala continued. Laughter echoed through the ballroom. Lives were being changed with every handshake, every donation, every promise of support. And somewhere in Connecticut, in a small rehabilitation center, Vanessa Montgomery was helping another broken woman find her way back to humanity. Margaret touched the silver bracelet on her wrist. You saw us. She had seen them, all of them. The invisible, the forgotten, the dismissed. And in seeing them, she had found herself. The woman who had spent 6 weeks on her knees had risen to change the world, not with anger, not with vengeance, with love. 7 months after the gala, Margaret sat in a hospital waiting room, her hands clasped tightly together, her heart pounding with anticipation. Sarah had gone into labor at 3 a.m. Daniel had called her immediately, his voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Mom, it's happening! The baby is coming!" Margaret had never dressed so quickly in her life. Now she waited, pacing, praying, watching the clock tick past each agonizing minute. Rosa sat beside her, having insisted on coming along. James was there too, and Carlos and Emily. The entire Hampton staff had gathered in the waiting room, a family united not by blood, but by something deeper. "She'll be fine," Rosa said softly, squeezing Margaret's hand. "Sarah is strong." "I know, but I can't help worrying. That's what mothers do." The clock showed 6:47 when Daniel burst through the double doors. His face was streaked with tears. His scrubs were wrinkled. His hair was wild. But his smile was the brightest thing Margaret had ever seen. "She's here," he whispered. "She's perfect." Margaret was on her feet before she knew she was moving. She threw her arms around her son, crying and laughing simultaneously. "A girl. It's a girl. 7 pounds 4 ounces, 10 fingers 10 toes, and she has your eyes, Mom, your exact eyes." "Can I see her?" Daniel took her hand. "Come." They walked down the corridor together past nurses who smiled at the obvious joy radiating from them both. When they reached the room, Sarah was propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant. In her arms lay a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "Margaret," Sarah said softly, "meet your granddaughter." Margaret approached the bed slowly, almost reverently. She looked down at the tiny face, the closed eyes, the perfect rosebud mouth. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I'm your grandmother." The baby stirred slightly as if responding to her voice. "Would you like to hold her?" Sarah asked. Margaret's hands trembled as she took the baby into her arms. She had held Daniel like this 36 years ago. She had made him the same promises she was about to make now. "I will protect you," she whispered to the baby. "I will love you. I will teach you that kindness is strength and compassion is courage. I will show you how to see the invisible people, the forgotten ones, the dismissed." The baby's eyes opened for just a moment, blue like Daniel's, like Richard's all those years ago. "She's beautiful," Margaret breathed. "Her name is Margaret Rose Harrison," Daniel said. "Maggie for short." Margaret looked up at her son through tears. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. We both did." Daniel put his arm around Sarah. "She'll carry your name and your legacy, hopefully your courage too." Margaret looked back down at her granddaughter. "She'll have all of that and more. I'll make sure of it." In the waiting room, the staff erupted in celebration when Daniel announced the news. Hugs were exchanged, tears were shed, and Rosa pulled out a bottle of champagne she had somehow smuggled past hospital security. "To baby Maggie," she said, raising her cup. "May she grow up to be as brave as her grandmother." "To baby Maggie," everyone echoed. Margaret watched them celebrate these people who had become her family. A year ago they had been strangers united only by their shared suffering. Now they were bound by something stronger. Love, genuine, unconditional love. 2 weeks after the birth, Margaret received an unexpected visitor at her apartment. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m. She opened it to find a woman she didn't recognize standing in the hallway. The woman was young, perhaps 30, with tired eyes and nervous hands. "Mrs. Harrison, my name is Jennifer. I wrote you a letter 6 months ago about the rehabilitation program. Margaret's eyes widened. "Jennifer, of course, please come in." Jennifer stepped inside hesitantly, looking around the apartment with obvious discomfort. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I needed to see you. In person." "Sit down, please. Can I get you something, coffee, tea?" "No, thank you. I won't take much of your time." They sat across from each other in the living room. Jennifer's hands twisted in her lap. "I finished the program last month," she said. "Graduated, I guess you could call it. Vanessa said I was one of their biggest success stories." "That's wonderful. Congratulations." "Thank you, but that's not why I'm here." Jennifer took a deep breath. "I'm here because I owed someone an apology, and I finally tracked her down." Margaret frowned. "Who?" "A woman I hurt, years ago, before the program, before I understood what I was doing." Jennifer's voice cracked. "Her name was Rosa Mendez. She worked for my family when I was a teenager. I treated her terribly. I called her names, made her life miserable, got her fired when she tried to stand up for herself." Margaret's heart stopped. "Rosa, our Rosa." Jennifer nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I found out she works for you now, for your son. I've been trying to work up the courage to contact her, but I was too ashamed." "How did you find out?" "Vanessa told me. When I mentioned what I had done, she recognized the name. She said Rosa was one of the people she had hurt too." Jennifer wiped her eyes. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know Rosa probably hates me. But I need her to know that I'm sorry, that I understand now how wrong I was." Margaret studied the young woman before her. The trembling hands, the genuine remorse, the desperate need for redemption. "Wait here," Margaret said. She picked up her phone and dialed Rosa's number. "Rosa, I need you to come to my apartment. Right now. There's someone here you need to meet." 45 minutes later, Rosa arrived. When she walked into the living room and saw Jennifer, her face went pale. "You," she whispered. Jennifer rose to her feet. "Rosa, I don't know if you remember me." "I remember everything." Rosa's voice was hard. "Every insult, every humiliation. You were 17 years old and you made my life a living hell. I know what I did. Do you know that I cried every night for 6 months after your family fired me? Do you know that I couldn't get another job for a year because you told everyone I was a thief?" Jennifer's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry," Rosa laughed bitterly. "You destroyed my life because you were bored, because tormenting the help was entertainment for you. You're right. I was cruel. I was heartless. I was everything you say and worse. Then why are you here? What do you want from me?" Jennifer took a step forward, then stopped when Rosa flinched. "I want you to know that I've changed. I spent a year in therapy, confronting every terrible thing I've ever done. I've written apology letters to everyone I hurt. Most of them won't respond. Some of them threw my letters away without reading them." She looked at Rosa with desperate eyes. "But I had to try. I had to tell you that I'm not that person anymore. And I had to say I'm sorry, whether you believe me or not." Rosa was silent for a long moment. Margaret watched them both, her heart aching. "You want my forgiveness?" Rosa asked quietly. "I want you to know I'm trying to deserve it, even if I never get it." Rosa closed her eyes, her fists clenched at her sides. Then slowly she relaxed. "I spent 15 years hating you," she said. 15 years carrying that poison inside me. It ate at me, made me bitter, made me afraid to trust anyone. "I'm sorry." "Stop saying that." Rosa opened her eyes. "Words mean nothing. Mrs. Harrison taught me that. Actions matter. Choices matter." "Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right." Rosa considered for a long moment. "The foundation is looking for volunteers, people to work directly with families who've been affected by workplace abuse. It's hard work, long hours, no pay. I'll do it. It might take years before anyone trusts you. I'll wait." Rosa studied her face, searching for deception. She found none. "Then show up tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I'll be watching." "Thank you, Rosa. Thank you." Rosa turned and walked toward the door. Then she stopped. "Jennifer." "Yes. I'm not ready to forgive you yet, but I'm willing to let you try to earn it." She left. Jennifer collapsed onto the couch, sobbing with relief. Margaret sat beside her and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That took courage," Margaret said. "What you just did." "I was terrified. I almost didn't come. But you did. That's what matters." Jennifer looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "How did you do it? How did you endure what Vanessa put you through without becoming bitter?" Margaret considered the question carefully. Because bitterness is a choice, every day we choose whether to hold on to our pain or transform it into something else. I chose to transform mine. Into what? Into purpose, into compassion, into the foundation that helped you find your way back. Jennifer shook her head slowly. "You're the most remarkable person I've ever met. I'm just a mother who loved her son. Everything else grew from that." 3 months later, the foundation celebrated its biggest success yet. A landmark lawsuit against one of New York's largest hotel chains had resulted in a $20 million settlement for domestic workers who had been systematically abused by management. The story made national news. Margaret was interviewed on television, Daniel on the radio. The foundation received so many donations that they had to hire additional staff just to process them. But the moment that meant the most to Margaret happened quietly away from the cameras. She was in her office reviewing case files when Patricia Chen knocked on the door. "Mrs. Harrison, there's someone here to see you." Margaret looked up. "Who is it?" Patricia stepped aside. Warren Caldwell walked in. Margaret recognized him immediately from the research they had done during the trial. Vanessa's first victim. The Texas billionaire who had paid $5 million to escape her. He was older now, grayer, with deep lines around his eyes, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. "Mrs. Harrison, thank you for seeing me." Margaret rose and shook his hand. "Mr. Caldwell, I wasn't expecting you." "I know, I should have called ahead, but I was in New York and I couldn't leave without meeting you in person." "Please, sit down." They sat across from each other. Warren's hands rested on his knees, calm and steady. "I followed your trial," he said. "Every day, every testimony, every piece of evidence. I'm sorry you had to relive those memories. Don't be. Watching you expose Vanessa for who she really is." He paused, emotion flickering across his face. "It was the most cathartic experience of my life. I'm glad it helped. It did more than help. It set me free." Warren leaned forward. "For 3 years I blamed myself. I thought I was weak for not seeing through her. I thought I was stupid for letting her manipulate me." "You weren't weak or stupid. You were targeted by a skilled predator. I know that now, because of you." Warren's eyes grew moist. "You showed the world that anyone can be fooled, that the victim is never at fault, that the only shame belongs to the abuser." Margaret reached out and took his hand. "That's why we do this work, so people like you know they're not alone." Warren nodded slowly. "I came here to thank you, but I also came to offer something." "What's that?" "My support, my resources, whatever the foundation needs." He pulled out a checkbook. "I've been looking for a way to turn my pain into purpose. I think I finally found it." He wrote a check and handed it to Margaret. She looked at the number and gasped. $10 million. It's a start. There's more where that came from. "Mr. Caldwell, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll use it to help people. Say you'll make sure no one else goes through what we went through." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I promise. On my life, I promise." Warren stood and extended his hand. "Then I'll be in touch, Mrs. Harrison. We have work to do." When he left, Margaret sat alone in her office holding the check in trembling hands. $10 million. Added to their existing resources, it would allow them to expand into 5 new cities, to help thousands of additional workers, to change the landscape of domestic labor rights across the country. All because she had decided to put on a maid's uniform and scrub floors. That evening, Margaret gathered her family at the Hamptons estate. Daniel and Sarah were there with baby Maggie, now 4 months old, and the center of everyone's universe. Rosa and James and Carlos and Emily and Grace were there. Patricia Chen was there. Even Jennifer, still nervous but increasingly accepted. They gathered around the dining table, a feast spread before them, the autumn sun setting through the windows. "I want to make an announcement," Margaret said. Everyone fell silent. Today, Warren Caldwell donated $10 million to the foundation. Gasps and cheers erupted around the table. "With this money, we'll be able to expand our work dramatically. More cities, more legal support, more rehabilitation programs." She paused, her voice catching. "But that's not why I gathered you here." Daniel frowned. "Mom, what is it?" Margaret looked around the table at the faces of everyone she loved. 3 years ago, I was just a retired seamstress, a mother who worried about her son. I had no idea that a simple decision would lead to all of this. She gestured at the room, at the people, at the life that had grown from her sacrifice. "I want you all to know that none of this would have been possible without you. Rosa, you showed me courage when you risked everything to help me. James, you taught me that a father's love knows no bounds. Carlos, Emily, Grace, you endured alongside me and never gave up hope." Her eyes found Daniel and Sarah. "And you, my son, you opened your eyes when it would have been easier to stay blind. You chose truth over comfort. You became the man I always knew you could be." Daniel's eyes were wet. "Mom, I'm not finished." Margaret smiled. "I've decided to step back from day-to-day operations at the foundation. It's time for younger leaders to take over." "What will you do?" Sarah asked. Margaret looked at the baby in Sarah's arms. "I'm going to be a grandmother, a real one, present for every milestone, every first word, every scraped knee and bedtime story." She reached out and touched little Maggie's cheek. "I spent 6 weeks pretending to be someone else. Now I want to spend whatever years I have left being exactly who I am. A mother, a grandmother, a woman who learned that love is the most powerful force in the world." Rosa raised her glass. "To Margaret Harrison, the woman who saw us when no one else did." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Margaret." As they drank, Margaret felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. The journey that had begun with desperation and fear had ended in joy and purpose. She had saved her son. She had exposed a monster. She had built a legacy that would outlive her. But more than that, she had learned something about herself, something precious, something true. She was stronger than she ever imagined, braver than she ever believed, and capable of love so fierce it could move mountains. 1 year later, Margaret received a final letter. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, delivered with the regular mail. The envelope was simple, handwritten with a return address she recognized immediately: Vanessa Montgomery. Margaret hesitated before opening it. A year had passed since their last communication. The rehabilitation program was thriving. Vanessa had kept her distance as promised. What could she possibly have to say now? Margaret opened the envelope and began to read. "Dear Mrs. Harrison, I know I promised not to contact you directly. I'm breaking that promise because this is the last letter I'll ever write to you. Next week, I'm leaving New York. I've accepted a position with a nonprofit organization in Seattle working with women who've been released from prison. It's a chance to start completely fresh somewhere. No one knows my history. Before I go, I need to tell you something I've never said properly. Thank you. Not just for funding the program, not just for giving me a second chance, but for showing me what love looks like. When you knelt on that floor scrubbing tiles while I stood over you, I thought I was in control. I thought I was powerful. I thought you were weak. I was wrong about everything. You were the strongest person in that house. You endured 6 weeks of cruelty without breaking. You protected your son without revealing yourself. You chose love over pride, truth over comfort. I've spent 3 years trying to understand how you did it, how you absorbed all that pain and transformed it into something beautiful. I think I finally understand. You did it because love isn't a feeling. It's a choice. Every day, every moment you choose to love, even when it hurts, even when it costs you everything. I never learned that lesson from my parents. They taught me that love was conditional, that people were tools, that power was the only thing that mattered. You taught me differently, with your actions, not your words, with your sacrifice, not your sermons. I don't know if I'll ever truly change. I don't know if the darkness inside me can ever be fully healed. But I know this: every time I'm tempted to be cruel, I remember you, kneeling on that floor, dignity intact, heart unbroken, and I choose differently. That's your legacy, Mrs. Harrison. Not the foundation, not the lawsuits, not the millions of dollars raised. Your legacy is the choice you gave me, the choice to be better. I won't waste it. Goodbye and thank you for everything. Vanessa. Margaret set down the letter. For a long moment she simply sat in silence, letting the words settle into her heart. Then she picked up her phone and called Daniel. "Sweetheart, can you come over? There's something I need to show you." An hour later, Daniel sat across from his mother, the letter in his hands. When he finished reading, he looked up with an expression she couldn't quite identify. "Do you believe her?" he asked. "I believe she's trying. Whether she'll succeed..." Margaret shrugged. "That's not up to me." "Are you going to respond?" Margaret considered the question. "No. I think she said everything that needed to be said. And I think my silence will mean more than any words I could write." Daniel nodded slowly. "You're remarkable, Mom. You know that I'm just a mother who loves her son. You're so much more than that." Daniel stood and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "You're the reason I believe in second chances, the reason I trust people again, the reason little Maggie will grow up knowing what real strength looks like." Margaret held her son tightly. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Promise me you'll tell her the story when she's old enough. Tell her about the grandmother who pretended to be a maid. Tell her about the darkness we faced and the light we found. I promise. And tell her that love is always worth the risk. Always. Even when it hurts. Even when it costs everything." Daniel pulled back and looked into his mother's eyes. "I'll tell her every day, until she knows it by heart." 5 years later, on a sunny afternoon in June, Margaret Rose Harrison sat on a blanket in Central Park, surrounded by her family. Little Maggie, now 5 years old, with her grandmother's eyes and her mother's smile, played in the grass nearby. Daniel and Sarah watched her with the exhausted joy of parents everywhere. Rosa and James had both retired from the estate, but they still came to family gatherings. Carlos had started his own landscaping business, funded by a grant from the foundation. Emily and Grace had both married to kind men who treated them with respect. The Harrison Foundation had expanded to 12 cities. It had helped over 50,000 workers. It had changed laws, shifted culture, and made the invisible visible in ways Margaret never imagined. But none of that mattered as much as this moment. Little Maggie ran over and climbed into Margaret's lap. "Grandma, tell me the story again." Margaret smiled. "Which story, sweetheart?" "The maid story, the one where you were a secret princess in disguise." Margaret laughed softly. "I wasn't exactly a princess." "But you were secret, and you saved Daddy from the evil witch." "Something like that." Maggie settled against her grandmother's chest. "Tell me, from the beginning." Margaret wrapped her arms around her granddaughter and began. "Once upon a time, there was a mother who loved her son very much, so much that she would do anything to protect him, even if it meant becoming invisible." And as she told the story, Margaret felt a profound sense of completion. The journey that had begun in pain and fear had ended in love and joy. The sacrifices she had made had blossomed into something beautiful beyond imagination. She had spent 6 weeks on her knees, but she had risen to build a legacy that would outlast her by generations. When the story ended, little Maggie looked up at her grandmother with serious eyes. "Grandma, I want to be like you when I grow up." "Like me. I want to help invisible people. I want to make them feel seen." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Then you will, sweetheart. I know you will." She pulled her granddaughter close and looked out at her family at the park, at the city that had witnessed her greatest trials and her greatest triumphs. And she understood finally the answer to the question that had haunted her for years. Why had she endured it? Why had she sacrificed her dignity, her comfort, her very identity? Because love was not a feeling, it was a choice. A daily moment-by-moment decision to put someone else's well-being above your own. She had made that choice every day for 6 weeks, and that choice had changed everything. Margaret Harrison had pretended to be a maid to test her son's fiancé. But she had discovered something far more valuable than Vanessa's true nature. She had discovered her own strength, her own purpose, her own capacity for love that knew no bounds. And in the end, that discovery was the greatest gift of all. Because when you choose love over fear, when you choose truth over comfort, when you choose to see the invisible people that the world ignores you become something more than you ever thought possible. You become a force for good that cannot be stopped. You become a light that darkness cannot extinguish. You become exactly who you were always meant to be. Margaret closed her eyes and held her granddaughter close, listening to the sounds of her family laughing and playing around her. This was her legacy. Not the foundation, not the money, not the fame. This, love, family, the knowledge that her sacrifice had created something beautiful. And as the sun began to set over Central Park, casting everything in golden light, Margaret Harrison made one final vow. She would spend whatever days remained teaching little Maggie everything she knew, about courage, about compassion, about the power of seeing people for who they truly were. And when her time finally came, she would leave this world knowing that her legacy would live on, in the hearts of everyone she had touched, in the lives of everyone she had saved, in the eyes of the granddaughter who carried her name, because love never dies. It only transforms, passes on, and grows stronger with each generation. And Margaret Harrison's love was the strongest force the world had ever known.